Hi, beauties, and I am Rochelle for those of you that don't know me. So today the guides just wanted to bring through a few downloads and just explanations of what are happening in the collective space. Yeah, I honestly was clear with them. Like, I don't want to do a repetitive, this is your weekly guidance or this is thing. I really am all about what needs to come through here and now. And sometimes it's card readings, sometimes it's energetic tools, other times they just want to explain what's happening so you can piece those pieces together for yourself. So today, what was really coming through and that they kept kind of nudging me about was talking a little bit about the collective anger. Cue the sirens. That's always their little love nudge that we're on the right track there. And with the collective anger, they're saying you might be even uncertain what's coming up for you. So if you can't quite articulate that feeling or irritability of annoyance or anger, they're saying that's okay as long as you acknowledge that you're experiencing it and actually taking some tools and steps to help yourself express it. So anger, if it gets stuck within us, that's when resentment builds. That when we keep kind of adding. That's when like the explosive rage that we lash out with can really come in. And then once we're kind of at that point, it's really, really hard to bring that back. And they're showing me almost like this volcano. It's like, it's okay for the volcano to actually erupt. But what happens if you're in the vicinity of that eruption is everything's going to get destroyed in its path. So to allow anger to not be a destructive force in your life, but almost like this catalyst, it's really giving yourself the space that you need in order to process it. Now, I grew up in a family of yellers, and funny enough, like I shut down with anger. So everyone else could kind of battle it out, and that's how they process. But for me, if ever I was on the receiving end of an anger blast, just because I could feel it, it would just be so overwhelming. And then I couldn't articulate what was going on with me, and it would almost kind of be like this wave that would just kind of take me out. So I've needed to really learn how to kind of press pause if I'm really on that receiving end and also request that space. So it's not about ignoring. It's not about, I don't want to deal with this, like you deal with your shit and I'll deal with mine. But it's like, hey, I need to press pause right now in this conversation and then going to take the time, but make sure to come back to it if you need to have a conversation or a dialogue with your partner, friend, loved one, when anger really comes in, because often you can even lose track of what you're trying to articulate. And there really is that emotion to connect in for yourself with. So tools that I have used over the years, by no means am I, an anger aficionado. I actually have a beautiful friend writing a book on sacred anger. So I'm feeling a little bit like, guides, like this is her jam. Like, why are you having me talk about it? But I will say I've had to do a lot of anger work, and a lot of it stems from a child. So like when you see people kind of angry at customer service people, the clerk in line, you're not like, that's a full grown adult right there. You often, like for me, I'm like, that is a child, that is like a toddler having a breakdown, and it's just coming out on that person. And I've worked in customer service, I'm aging myself, but for like a couple decades now. And like you'd be surprised, like when I did call center work, I was yelled at more than I have ever been because they don't see the human side of you. And it's like when we know people, we tend to hold back a little bit. But often, unfortunately, people on the front line tend to take the brunt of, I would say, these childhood tantrums because you're just trying to, really process through those emotions and you don't know any other way. It's like, think about a kid trying to navigate the world and feeling these feelings. They just have breakdowns and temper tantrums because they don't know how else to express it. And anger needs to move. It can't get stuck. It can't stagnate. Otherwise, it's going to build and build and build. And that's when that volcanic eruption happens. So to give yourself permission to actually identify, okay, I'm feeling this, not necessarily needing to know why it's there, but give yourself permission to say, well, I need to express this. So for me, I was a big, like freaking punk kid. And it's so funny because at the time I was like, oh, I'm so cool, I'm in punk, but I was like the poppiest, like brightest colored, like punk kid ever. Like there were no like safety pins on me. It was like very vibrant colors. But anyways, the mosh pits were my anger sanctuary. Like they were where I just like could get it out with. It was just such a beautiful expression of anger and movement, but not while like hurting anyone or deliberately coming back after anyone. And so that was really a big, beautiful release for me when I didn't know how to formulate anger or know how to express it safely safely. It's like I could kind of take it out. I could use the music to channel it through, and then I would just like allow myself. And then you're also held in the pit as well. So it's like it's not only about expression, but it's about knowing that you're kind of held in the space of like misfits. And I just like, I don't know, there's just something so sacred about it. I know COVID's not allowing us to do that right now, but so for me, I still like if I put on punk music and stuff, it helps me channel that out, or like some really good screamo or like metal. It just kind of helps to channel it in a really beautiful way that I can just kind of get it out of me. Another thing that I was taught by one of my counselors back in the day was to throw eggs. And I highly suggest doing this outside so the cleanup is a little bit easier, because I did them in my bathroom and then the eggs went everywhere. And then it was like, it almost defeated the purpose, because then I was so overwhelmed and angry that I then had to clean up the entire bathroom. So if you're going to use eggs, do it in an outside space so you can like wash it down. And just because like when things break, so you can intention what you're going to throw into that. Boxing is great. Some people like to go for a run and kind of take it out in the gym. I like to sometimes just go for a walk by myself and just kind of move that energy out. I have like a kid's bat, like a plastic bat, and you can use that to hit pillows. You can also just like scream. Like if you don't, like for me, like often the throat chakra gets clogged when I'm really angry. And so sometimes you need to get that expression just really moving through. So I'll often like throw it into a pillow, scream, or just like channel it into like a space that I can just let my voice out, because it's just that expression that is so important with anger, and a really supportive way for you to move through it, so you don't have the shame hangover. You don't have the morning after feels of like, oh my God, I have like all this amends to make, and then you kind of get even more down the spiral. So it's like really utilizing what's going to work with you. Like other things that I've been taught over the years is like tearing up newspapers, just because like that expression, they just keep saying that anger needs to break, it needs to be expressed, there needs to be movement for it to move through. So instead of utilizing other people for that space, allowing your surroundings to be a support for that. So tearing up paper, giving yourself permission to just kind of do what you need to do. Like some people like to dance it out, paint it out, scribble it out. Just giving yourself that space will also really help cultivate a really sacred practice in releasing that, so you can kind of then take pause after the final kind of upheaval comes through. So then you're like, okay, what is this actually triggering underneath it? So I know they've been talking a lot about triggers, and that is really the theme of like, what is actually going on for me with this? Do we feel helpless? Do we feel overwhelmed? Maybe, our fear has fully kicked in, or we feel things are unfair. There's a lot of reasons why things are going to come up for you. So it's kind of then giving yourself permission to connect the dots with it. And if you need a soothing practice, like if your inner child and like you feel like a kid, a thing that I, kind of like to do is I like to build like a fort. Like I loved blanket forts growing up, because it's just this like sensory calm. And so you can like angrily start like chucking all of the cushions off your couch and grabbing angrily all the blankets. But there's something about going into a space you feel safe within. Some people like to hide under the blanket. So if you find yourself needing that soothing as well, like know that there's no judgment over that. Like you got to take care of you, and you need to take care of what you need in that moment. And they're just kind of showing me the child tugging on like a pant leg, just being like, mommy, 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 daddy, daddy, daddy. It's like, it's not going to stop until they feel heard. And then the emotions are going to get bigger and bigger because they don't want to be ignored. So really look at the adult part of you and what actual age is showing up, because I often find that the inner child is really connected to a lot of the anger that we have and the feelings that come up here and now. And like I've even been talking about my customer service years, like I've had a woman that like lost her own sunglasses, but then like lost it on me, telling like me what everything in the world was wrong with me, because like she just couldn't fathom like that process. And So especially like I know customer service, y'all are gonna come at me with your like stories as well. Like, and I've seen so many times like people in their like 50s, 60s, 70s and like lose it like just like that because it's just it builds and it's too much, or they're not taking care of themselves. So it's just like another thing added on top that, you know, the straw that breaks the camel's back. So anger is important to acknowledge, to release, but do it in a way that is going to be really beneficial for you. And sometimes, you know, anger is a phenomenal catalyst that turns into passion to actually say enough is enough and to get shit done. So it's not a bad thing. We often make the expression of it bad when it hurts other people, or when someone pulls out a laundry list of all the things they're angry with you about that have been cultivating, and it's like that's very hurtful because it's like, A, you should be talking to me about it, and B, like, cool that you're making this list that you're then going to use against me anytime we come up to a battle with each other. So they're saying press pause if you can, say, look, like, I love you, this is important to come back to, but I know that I'm not going to be able to actually facilitate this conversation in a healthy way, so I need to step out, take care of my emotions, and make a time to come back to that. And some people don't like that. I have had to learn that because, you know, I learned that you never like go to bed angry, and that, you know, that I just want to work it out here and now, but that's my need, that's my desire. And if my partner, you know, isn't going to be there anyways, if it's like if that robot is powering down, that's just going to create even more overwhelm, and just kind of they're showing me just like elevate the already elevated feelings with it. So give yourself, you know, time and space. Know that you're not a bad person. Shame and guilt are often connected to the expression of anger, but just know that there's something deeper within you that's also bubbling up. And just by able to kind of bring conscious connection to that will allow you to kind of connect those dots and be like, oh, this is what it actually is. And then that gives you the power to actually make any choices or decisions that will help change that. And if it's something on the collective sphere that you just feel powerless and that it's never going to shift, they're saying, well, what can you bring into that? Or how can you show up differently as a human being that will help facilitate that, almost as this, they're saying, example in the collective space for other people then to become that example, and so on and so forth. So have you been feeling anger? Let me know where you're at. I always like to hear, you know, how this lands for people. And, you know, anger feels a lot of the time that it's like we're not allowed to express it, or we're bad if we express it, but it's more just how we've navigated the expression of it. And often we've been very destructive with anger rather than allowing it to be the passion catalyst of, you know, the divine truth to come through. So I love you. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.